they had a really good run, many hundreds of years. So you have Westminster, or the political class with Parliament, and you have the monarchy over there at Buckingham Palace. And both of these institutions, you have the monarchy, of course, during the period when Diana met her untimely death, was a kind of the beginning of a tabloidization of that institution, and made it into, as some people will tell me, look, the Queen is our Mickey Mouse, or the King is our Mickey Mouse. They're just tourist attractions. They're not to be taken seriously in any way. So there's no institutional integrity there. Now Westminster and the Bank of England are going to fall because they've been resting on their laurels for hundreds of years. If you live there, and this is the thing about it, is that they put up a good front. You go there and there's the Big Ben, and it's sounding dong, dong, and there's the Thames, and there's Parliament, and you're like, wow, this is solid. This is institutionally solid. But then when you go behind the wall into these organizations, you find that spies are losing the codes to secret codes all the time. They're selling, in the case of the Steele dossier, you've got spies inside MI6 selling state secrets for a gin and tonic down at the Groucho Club. So it's just like becoming a completely dysfunctional mess. And the time from that it would just collapse utterly, it was hard to predict the exact day. It seemed like it was happening imminently, and now it's gone. Right, well, this is the problem of having a monarchy and an aristocracy in place, is that when times get tough, as they're getting now, the monarchs and the aristocrats are going to jump ship, right? This is a rearguard action. This is the chief sanctions officer is trying to burn the bridges as they're running away, essentially. And this is what the aristocracy and the monarchy plan to do in Britain, and what's left of the aristocrat in continental Europe as well. We don't have an aristocratic class in the United States. We have an oligarchy class, and they'll be on their 300-foot yachts over there in Bimini or somewhere sipping Mai Tais with Jeff Bezos. But in Europe, it's a long-established tradition to simply, get your gold on the horses and start running away.
Yes, you're going to see that. That's what's happening there. In my opinion, that's what we see. If the U.S. Treasury is the one, they're the ones blowing up their role as the settlements.
I'll tell you what, is dirt cheap right now in England are these old castles. Mm-hmm. You can probably buy them for 5 cents on the dollar, but they're about to become very valuable real estate as the aristocrats and BBC presenters barricade themselves in these old castles with some, grenade launchers and old reruns of Jimmy Savile. That's what they'll spend the rest of their life looking at. Right. To your point, that no one has planned for this, even though it was very obvious that the end game was in sight. Nobody actually planned for it, which of course would be evidentially so. It wouldn't be catastrophic if people were planning for it. So how can you have a catastrophic end game without having everybody not plan for it? Am I right? Speaking of the ending, this is the ending of this segment. I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, much more coming your way.
Oh, by the way, you might want to tell people that there's a special coming up at the end of this week from Switzerland.
Yeah, there's a special coming at the end of this week from Switzerland. The Bitcoin world is buzzing about Pacific Bitcoin Conference. Tell us about it. Yeah, well, I remember back at Bitcoin 2022, Miami, or 2021, the best party at the event was the Swan Party. So if it's going to be anything like that, it's going to be that times 100x. So good show there. Sounds fantastic. Now, you run a Bitcoin-only operation in the past 3 years since you first founded Swan. What has been the biggest challenge in the Bitcoin market and the newbies mentality? That time frame, how has it changed over 3 years, if at all? And how is driving adoption going? Yeah, this is very cyclical, in this industry, going back to the beginning. There was the first wave of what we call shitcoins, back at the end of 2011, 2012. And of course, those names are long gone. And every 36 months or so, we see some new names near the top of the market cap list, and then they disappear. And it just goes over and over again. They package this thing over. They call it DeFi. They call it CeFi. It just... it's the same story over and over again. And you've come, the meme of here comes Corey, is a meme on Bitcoin Twitter. It's a meme of, I guess it's a guy on a beach who looks like he's really, focused on getting somewhere. And how did you take this role? How did this happen? Because you became the go-to guy for really unpacking in a very methodical, pragmatic way the fallacies and the shortcomings of these shitcoins. Beyond just the name calling that I might engage in, you actually go into it and explain why they are in fact garbage. How did that come about? Right, I guess it was Luna Bitcoin. When you correctly predicted a few weeks or a few months in advance. You just laid out the case and said, this is going to collapse utterly. This is how it's going to collapse. This is probably when it's going to collapse. And sure enough, it followed that script. And that caught the attention of some mainstream writers in Wall Street Journal, Barron's, and these types of outlets, CNBC. And they really took notice. Yeah. And so you got that message out there about really differentiating between Bitcoin and everything else in the market. That point had been lost. And it's still grouped together. That differentiation doesn't usually occur, but you have been great at educating the media about how to talk about this. Now, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender just over a year ago. Your thoughts on the significance of that, and also on the fact that they have remained Bitcoin maximalists, so much so that the President Bukele is on the cover of Bitcoin magazine looking like a founding father of the Orange Party. Corey? Well, in corporate terms, we've had examples, whether it's the Tylenol scare, Perrier had to totally rebrand themselves, turn themselves around. And we see this all the time. It's an economy that's roughly $28 billion in size, so it's not even as big as a big multinational like a Nike corporation or a Coca-Cola, for example. If one of these huge corporations decided they needed to rebrand themselves, relaunch themselves on a brand basis, how much would they spend on something like that? How much would Nike spend if they decided to totally rebrand themselves?
Oh, wow. Many billions of dollars for Nike.
Okay, so here's a many billions of dollar rebranding exercise. Now let's go back to El Salvador. They put 100 million into Bitcoin. They're sitting on a $50 million paper loss. Of course, it's not a realized loss, it's a paper loss. And they took a country that had a 30-year bad reputation, and now they're growing at 10% a year. I mean, is that the branding success story of the century? I mean, you've worked in the corporate world. Yeah. In future, I'm assuming that has something to do with Bitcoin. And a country like El Salvador that's made Bitcoin legal tender, they're on a Bitcoin standard, they're seeing huge benefits from this. So I would posit that you believe that El Salvador is heading into a bright orange future. What does that mean, Corey?